Hey guys, it's Anastasia. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'll be reviewing the M-Gram Gouache starter set along with the burnt umber. Spoiler alert, this has become my new favorite formula of gouache, and the palette that I'll be filling and mixing in today's video has become my favorite gouache palette. I also love my Arteza palette, which I created in my Arteza vs. Reeves comparison video, and I've been using these two palettes in conjunction with each other, though both are good alone. This set, which M-Gram markets as their starter set, includes titanium white, naphthol red, cobalt blue, ivory black, and azo yellow. I also picked up the single burnt umber color. The brand calls these fine art gouache rather than student or designer gouache due to their claims of superior quality and light-fastedness. M-Gram gouache stands out for a couple of reasons. They use honey in their formulation, which keeps the paints wet for longer, which I find very useful, and it also keeps the gouache from cracking as much if you let it dry in a palette and then re-wet it. I personally mainly use gouache in this way, so this is great for me. They claim that the honey also creates richer color, and actually I can see that. The only downside of the addition of honey is that it makes the paint a tiny bit less matte if you layer it up a lot. I personally don't really care about that at all, but I can see how some people would, especially because gouache is prized in particular for its flat, matte quality. To be clear, you can still get very matte paintings out of this. When I layer it a lot, I find there to be a slight variation in the level of flatness. Like when you turn the paper in the light, you can see it, but the less matte areas are still far from glossy. It's more like a satin finish when layered up a lot. I don't mind that, but maybe you do. The other thing that sets this brand apart is that they do not add white to every single color in order to make them more opaque, which a lot of other brands do. They state their position on this clearly on the back of the package. Most natural colors can be mixed using just this set, and all mixed colors will look very cohesive together, something that can be difficult to achieve with larger sets of gouache. Because this is a limited palette, there will be color harmony in your paintings if you're mixing all your colors from this set with very little conscious effort. You may recall, if you've seen that Arteza gouache video I just mentioned, that I went pretty in depth into opacity between gouache brands and why opacity is not always a good thing or not always the most important thing. I did a lot of research on the individual pigments used in gouache and other mediums, and I learned a lot. Certain pigments are naturally just more transparent than others, but brands may decide to add chalks and fillers to bulk them up because customers sometimes want more opacity and because it saves the brand money in their formulation. Personally, I really can't stand fillers. I much prefer my paints to be transparent if that's how the pigments are naturally. M-Gram seems to be the only brand of gouache to actively advertise that they do not try to increase opacity in any way. They even say on the packaging that they leave the addition of white up to the artist. I absolutely love that. For example, ultramarine blue and the pigments used to create it in any paint medium are usually just more transparent than other colors. Some brands of gouache add a little white or chalk or other filler to make it more opaque. But I find that this makes the color mix less cleanly. Adding black to that ultramarine blue with the fillers, for example, would significantly gray it down because you're essentially mixing black and white plus the blue rather than just darkening the blue with the black. When you have a tube of ultramarine blue like the M-Gram, you can still decide to make it more opaque by adding white yourself. You can still do that. You just have more control, and that's what I love most about this range of gouache. That being said, there is also a place for other kinds of gouache, which are formulated with opacity as a priority. For certain styles of design work, you might want the flattest, most opaque, and even coverage you can get. On the other hand, there are artists like me who use gouache almost like oil paint with lots of thinner layers and glazing. Adding too much white or chalkiness into the mix unintentionally can really muddy up the painting. For this reason, I really like to use different kinds of gouache together. If I need to paint something red, for example, I choose which red I want based more on the texture and how transparent the color is or how I need it to be, based more on that than what color red, if that makes sense. The more you know, the better you can use these tools how you want to. I believe it is important, especially for me personally, to have a core set of colors that are very pure and possibly translucent if that particular pigment comes that way naturally. Then I can choose to bulk up the body of that color with another naturally opaque pigment, such as yellow ochre is just already naturally opaque, or cadmium red. Or I can choose to bulk up a more transparent color and make it more opaque by adding white. As long as I have those core colors though, then I welcome convenience colors that have white added as long as they're good quality. There's nothing wrong with them. Arteza has a sky blue color that I use out of the tube all the time for skies and even in mixing skin tones because it's a blue that has already been tempered with white, so it makes it harder to go overboard and have to overcorrect for too much blue. Skin tones are all muddy tones when you think about it, so convenience mixes with white added can come in useful in these situations. However, I will always start with my core colors and go from there, and this set is that for me. In my Arteza vs. Reeves gouache video and my recent gouache tips video and also my metallic gouache video, I've laid out piece by piece my philosophy on what to look for in gouache paint. I feel there's a lot of misunderstanding in the art community about this, so I really want to help by putting in my 2 cents. I'm sure I'll make a dedicated video all about this, recapping on everything at some point, but the main misconceptions that I see are that colors need to be very bright and that colors need to be opaque. Not all pigments naturally come this way, so to suit the consumer, some companies will add stuff to the paint to make them that way. In the end, there's nothing wrong with that either, but knowledge is power. So even if you only use convenience mixes, I want for you to know that that's what you're using, because then you can better predict what will happen if you add black, add another color, etc. There's room in my art studio for all different mixes and textures of paint, and I find uses for all of them. The more I know about how each are formulated, the better I know what to do with them and what will be the most efficient way to mix. Painting is honestly hard enough in the best of circumstances, so why make it even more confusing with unpredictable paints? Well, there's my little tangent. If you want to see these paints in action, watch my gouache tips video. All links will be below. If you want to see more about gouache formulation, then watch my Arteza vs. Reeves video. Recap on this review, I love these paints. They're very pure, and they can be used alone with no other colors, or could help fill out any collection of gouache paints from other brands. The colors and formulations are unique. This set could be useful to anyone, but especially someone wanting to get into precise color mixing and/or realism with gouache. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and enjoy the rest of your day.